Watch.
One. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of The Ravens Watch. I am your host, David Lee Corbo, a.k.a. The Raven, and I am joined today by Kay of Florida Sky Girl on Twitter, or X, I guess you would call it. We were actually supposed to do this yesterday, and I ended up getting into this whole debacle. I don't want to go on to it too much, but people who have already seen the Twitter posts, I figured I'd kind of unpack it a little bit. So Kay and I were supposed to shoot yesterday at like 3:30, and I pick up my son from school at 2:20, and he's what you would call a walker. And, you know, I didn't really see him showing up. I'm waiting by the gate. I can see in the distance that the kids are starting to gear up to come towards us. And then the next thing you know, they double back. And so as if that's not confusing enough, all the kids are heading back to the school. An officer comes out and tells us that we all need to get in the school. So the next thing I know, my wife and I are wrapped up in this ordeal where we're sitting in the office of the school, the main office there, and all the lights are turned off. All the windows are blocked. The teachers had put papers in all the windows, and we're being shouted at not to speak. I guess they're trying to minimize the amount of chaos, right? And so this ordeal lasts like an hour. We're sitting in this dark room. We don't know where the kids are. We don't know what's going on. No one's giving us any information. And at one point, an officer does come out and tries to explain to us what's going on. And next thing you know, he's intercepted by the principal, who goes, "We don't need to communicate with them. You come over here and talk to me." So he actually has to stop explaining to all the worried parents what's going on, why there's a lockdown, where their children are, and goes over and has a conversation with the principal. And we're sitting there for probably another half an hour before we're just informed that the situation has resolved itself. Turns out that on the street that the school was on, there was a home invasion. And thank goodness down here in Florida, pretty much everybody's packing. And so the homeowner actually shot and killed one of the would-be invaders, injured another one, and the third one escaped and was later apprehended. And so there was no real immediate danger to the school, but still, nonetheless, we were locked down for an hour. And needless to say, my wife wrote some pretty strongly worded letters to the Board of Education on how the situation was handled, because as far as we're concerned, as parents, we should be the first ones to know what's going on with the kids, what the danger is, where our children are. And she made it so that that didn't happen. But I just wanted to give that to everybody who saw the Twitter post yesterday and were curious about what happened. I think ultimately there was no danger. It was just a precaution. There was 2 other schools that were also shut down that were in the area. They were also on lockdown. And we just got unlucky enough to get wrapped up in the whole situation. So, but here we are, Saturday morning, and we are here with Kay, and Kay is going to share with us some of her paranormal experiences, her own paranormal testimony. Kay, before we get into it, do you want to tell everybody, where they can find you on Twitter? Because you do host the spaces that I'm actually quite fond of, and I think a lot of people would like what you guys talk about there. It's very free-form conversation. There's a lot of really salt of the earth, warm and friendly people talking about very interesting topics. So would you be interested in giving that a shout out?
Oh, yeah, sure. Thanks, man. Florida Sky Girl, or Gal, on Twitter. And we do spaces almost every day except for Thursdays and Sundays. And it's just in the morning until about 3 p.m. Eastern. And yeah, we're just like a little family, a tight-knit group, and we get some other ideas in there, and that's cool. But we don't allow fighting, none of that. So.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's difficult. I always find that in the sort of truther community, there's quite a bit of aggressive back and forth about whose truth is the truest. You know what I mean? And I always think it's so silly because we all have that commonality of having been lied to on a mass scale. You think that would bring us together. That'd be more of a bonding agent. And instead, it actually causes quite a bit of infighting because people have ideas, they get married to them, And should somebody say something to the contrary, next thing you know, there's, some aggression, some animosity. But you guys do a great job of keeping it really mild. And it's nice to hop into a place occasionally and see a bunch of people having these conversations where nobody's claiming to be an expert on anything. Everyone's just exploring ideas and treats each other really respectfully. So I enjoy popping into your spaces. I think other people would as well. So Kay, in regards to these experiences, I know a lot of them are of the sleep paralysis variety. That's just kind of what I picked up from the context of our conversations. You've never really gone in too deep. I'd be interested in hearing maybe some of the earlier ones, when these things started for you, and take it away.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it first started when I was 13. Is the weirdest thing. It's so vivid. It's different than all the other experiences. Like the first time I was, for some reason, sleeping on my parents' couch instead of my bedroom. I don't know why, or I was falling asleep. And like all of a sudden my body like felt like it was floating, like lifting up, and everything around me was, like I could see it lifting up with me. It was crazy. I don't know. And then all of a sudden, a picture of my uncle who had passed away when I was 5 showed up in front of my face, and then it caught on fire. And then all of a sudden I dropped. Like I didn't know what the hell to make out of it. So I never like said anything to my mom. And then we moved into a new house, like, I don't know, a few months later. And I'm falling asleep. I got the TV on. I'm just chilling, whatever. My mom has been working on the garage, like putting stuff away from a place we went to. This lady was moving, and so she was just putting all this stuff in the garage. And all of a sudden, like, I can't move. I'm not able to move at all. I can see everything around me. I can hear everything, but I can't move. And I've got this pressure on my chest, and all I can hear is, and it's like in my ear, but there's nothing. Like, I can only move my eyes and I can see the TV. And then I got to the ground. I was able to just suddenly like get down. So I thought, and I'm like dragging myself towards the garage, and then I snap out of it and like wake up. So like I didn't even actually leave my bed, but I had imagined that I did. And I ran to my mom, who was still working in the garage. So this happened within like 5 minutes or something. And I told her what happened to me. And she explained to me about something that happened to her. And basically told me that it was something I was going to have to live with forever. So that's how it started.
Hey, what was you described a sound, but I couldn't quite hear it. How would you describe that sound? I think the mic just didn't pick it up. Was it like a buzzing or something?
No, it was like a breathing sound, but like loud in my ear. Like, like, I don't know how else to describe it as other than like a breath, but like really hard in my ear.
Like, so almost the sensation of wind, at least at the bare minimum.
Right. Yeah.
Would you say that your uncle, you described this picture catching on fire, were you close to him?
I was, but I was only 5 when he killed himself.
So did you not, did you experience, because a lot of times death that happens to a family member when you're that young almost goes over your head. I know that I've had that experience where like I just couldn't, you can't quantify it. You're too young. But on an emotional level, did it hit you that he wasn't around anymore?
I think it did more so a few years before then. Like when I was 9, I think is when it actually hit me. And I was going through some dark times then. So I don't know. Yeah, I know the time when this happened, I was very depressed. I was a very depressed kid, and I had a lot of things going on in life. So I think I was at a weak moment.
Yeah, these, I talk about it a lot on my show, right? It's like, I know we haven't crossed this bridge in regards to your stories yet, but this idea that some of these experiences are brought on by something nefarious. and that these things, they feed off of negative energy. It's how they kind of gain strength and gain momentum, and then can affect you on more dramatic levels. It's like a feedback loop, right? So they'll start small, generating a small amount of fear, and they'll feed off of that, gets them to be a little bit stronger, and then they can affect you on a larger scale, thereby producing more fear and then gathering more energy from it. And it's this feedback loop until they get to some, much stronger place. But I do know that because they feed off of negative energy, and because children seem to have this innate connection to whatever this realm is, whatever the spiritual side of life, children are much more connected to that than adults are, right? And so already you're a viable target. And then you layer on top of that, like we just discussed, this negative energy that's created by, sort of as you're describing, a hard life, being depressed at that age. That is kind of a prime real estate, as it were, for things of that nature. But that's just where, it's funny because we were supposed to do the show yesterday, and the night before, I had sleep paralysis for like the first time in a long time. And it's funny because I knew I was going to talk to you, and I knew that these stories would be of that variety. And, I'll keep it brief, but I had this thing where, like, I'm laying on the bed, my wife is next to me, and my wife has a history of, like, sensing these things when they're happening to me, and she'll snap me out of it. It's like a godsend, really. And I try to, I'm like rolling over onto her, and I'm getting like my whole arm very slowly on her body. And I'm trying to like shake my body enough to wake her up. And she wakes up and she's like talking to me like, "Hey, are you okay? Is everything all right?" And I'm not snapping out of it. And it's not like terrifying yet. It's much more exhausting, right? Because of the energy that it takes to get out of sleep paralysis is very draining. It feels very, so needless to say, I did not get good sleep that night. But it turns out when I finally do wake up, she wasn't even there. She had just so happened to get up and go to the bathroom, which to me is like, whoa, this thing got me when she wasn't here. I always look at it as, I'm so deep in the game. I'm like, it's this thing, Yes. And it trapped me into this moment where like she wasn't even here. And it's like, it toys with you. And then, once again, last night I'm having bullshit happen to me too, but it is very alarming and very energy consuming when this shit happens.
It is, man. Definitely. The most it ever got me was when I was pregnant with my first child. And the doctors had told me I was going to lose her. I was only 17. They were wrong. They just wanted me to not have a baby, I think. They were evil. Anyway, I ripped up my Bible and cursed God. Well, that thing freaking attacked me more than ever in my life. And my partner at the time, her dad, he also was there with me through it. And he experienced seeing it and stopping it for me. Like, he got to the point he was sensitive too, to that struggle we have when we're trying to get out of it.
Oh, so he was able to see you struggling in sleep paralysis?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like a muffled kind of like a muffled scream, sort of. Yeah. There's a lot of struggle, but it's all muffled. But if you look at it closely, there's a lot of like, jerking movements and a lot of stifled energy, but you're struggling and you're trying to get out of it. It's a very weird experience. And I had Vicky Joy Anderson on my show, and she talked quite a bit about it. And it's like, yeah, there's a physiological aspect to sleep paralysis, just so you're not acting out your dreams and things of that nature. You're not having a dream that you're running through the field and then suddenly running into your bedroom wall. So I can get behind that idea. But I think when you're in that state, you're very vulnerable. So, but let's get back to your story. So you're 13, you have this experience, 2 of them, right? And let's go forward from there.
Okay. Well, I mean, like I said, it wasn't bugging me so much until I got pregnant. Like it would happen occasionally where I wouldn't be able to move, but I never saw anything. Like it was just, I couldn't freaking move. And I used all my strength to try to. And it felt dark, like a dark energy. But once I got pregnant and it was affecting me, then I started to see like shadows and eyes. And then I heard the deepest growl I've ever heard in my life that I can't replicate, or even something in a movie. And it was inside me. And I felt like I had to bow down to it. I don't know how to describe it other than like a bunch of wolves having to bow down to their alpha, you know?
Oh, okay. So let's talk about this experience. Where does this happen? How does this happen? Can you tell me about that time?
Yeah. So, sorry. Yeah. I've just had it happen so much, but this time was definitely terrifying. I was living at my parents' newer house. They were at the time using drugs. So things were not good in the house. It was a bad energies. And I was just having this nightmare that was abnormally vivid and like so real that I felt like I was dead. I don't know. So it started off where my mom opens up this attic door in my bedroom, and I don't know why she's doing
this. This is a dream that you're describing.
Right.
Okay.
But then it turns into sleep paralysis. So it's like I was dreaming this part, right? And I'm being held and by a body that's cold, and I can't see anything but long hair, and it's a dark, like there's black around me. There's nothing but this body, and I can't see myself. I can just see this body and feel the cold hardness. And then I wake up and all of a sudden I can't move, and like sleep paralysis, but it's more alert than normal. I don't know how to describe that, but anyway, I'm fighting it like usual, trying to flip it off. And then all of a sudden, I hear this deep roar, like growl. Like, I don't know how to describe it. It's so deep and terrifying. And it's like inside of me. And I literally felt like I had to bow down to it. Like, I couldn't try to fight it anymore. I couldn't try to lift my middle finger up anymore at it. It was so terrifying that finally, as soon as I got out of it, because I was praying in my head, you know, Jesus, please, in the name of Christ, like I demand you leave me. And it let go, and I hollered and screamed. And I had never done that in all the times that I've ever had sleep paralysis. That was terrifying.
So when you say you have this nightmare, right? And you say it starts with an attic door, your mother opening an attic door?
Yeah.
So is there more to the dream, or is that just a moment that you remember?
It starts off like she's in my bedroom. Like I don't leave my bedroom ever. It's weird. And she opens the attic door, which isn't even in my room. It's in the garage. But she was on drugs at the time, and she was very scary, like sometimes, and acted some psycho. So I guess I was seeing her as a demon. I don't know how else to describe, but her eyes were so dark. Nothing was there but darkness. So then
you recognize this. Is this the same what you're describing, right? Where her eyes are darkness. This isn't to the part where there's an entity that's got you with cold dead arms. Or is that what you're describing, or is this before we even get there?
This is like, I see this, and then all of a sudden it's dark and I'm in cold dead arms. And I feel this horror inside of me when this is happening, like this deep despair that I've never experienced other than in this dream. It's like complete, utter despair while I'm in these cold arms. And then
a lot of people would describe it's like this this feeling of like mortal dread. Would you say that that's an apt?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, oof.
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing. that feeling because you could be faced with any number of things. You know, we talked at the top about how I was going through this thing where there might be an active shooter. We don't know if it's on the school grounds. We don't know what's going on. I don't have a sense of fear as much as I have a sense of, paying closer attention. I'm looking around, looking for exits, which door is going to lead me to where my son might be, just trying to gather as much information about the situation as possible. And I think that is outside of panic. That is what you have one of two things when a scary situation happens. If you're approached by an animal in the street, it's a dog and it's a big dog. There's two things. You're either going to panic and there's a lot of fear there, or you're going to try to assess the situation and figure out what to do. Whereas this feeling of like mortal dread feels so foreign. It doesn't make sense for you to be as afraid as you are, right? Like,
right.
I've described sleep paralysis experiences where like I would wake up in paralysis and I would be aware. I'd be in that hyper state of awareness like you described, right? It's like you're more awake than usual despite your body not being able to move. Mm-hmm. And so I'm taking in everything around the room. And then suddenly when a shadow person arrives, I'm hit with an involuntary sense of dread, almost like this is something that's imposed upon me. I'm being made to feel such a high level of fear that is so foreign to any other experience. Nothing's replicated it. And so I always look at that as something that's like implemented on you or something of that nature, because I just haven't found anything in waking life that replicates that level of fear. It is completely foreign, and it is a mortal doom feeling. Like doom is very much the word that I would use to describe that.
Yeah. Thank you for describing it that way, because honestly, it is the worst, deepest, darkest feeling I've ever felt.
So when we come to this entity with the cold hands, do you feel like this represents your mother, or is this something different?
Looking at it now, I feel like something was trying to get inside of me, if that makes sense. Because the way it made me bow to it, I knew my mom was an open door because of the drugs. So, and the psychoacting was totally demonic to me. So I totally believe that drugs open doorways in people and allow demons in. And I was surrounded by it.
That's an interesting point as well, because not only do I have experiences where I would share that sentiment of like something wanting in, that is a common theme. And so I know I've described to you in your spaces this idea of like the knocking, and it does feel like it's like the story of the vampire, like it has to be invited in. You have to let it in. And I think I've even talked on your spaces about seeing entities around my home when I first moved in and experiencing knocking on all the windows, all the doors for like a period of 2 weeks, to the point where, to the point where everybody else heard it as well. My wife, my niece, my son, my cousin would be here. We'd hear it together. And it does seem to be a common theme with whatever these things are, that maybe they need a host. Especially when you talk about having been pregnant and having these experiences kind of bump up a few notches. I think they're opportunistic. So not only do they feed off of negative energy, but they're looking for a host, somebody who's willing, which that sensation of like bowing down is it's a way of recognizing that they're superior, which in a way is recognizing like them as the leader, which you can then take and expand on that and say that, well, who are they leading or what are they leading? Well, they could be leading you if you let them in. So it's interesting that you should describe that feeling because, like I said, I've had experiences where I would argue something was trying to get in, whether it was me or my home. And it's not unique to me. There's a lot of people that have that experience.
That's wild. And it's really cool to hear that other people have experienced it because other than my exes, which I have 2 exes that experienced it with me, no one else has really understood or cared. They're like, you're just crazy or you just have some medical issue.
Yeah, I don't think that these things they certainly don't happen in a vacuum. So oftentimes people will describe these events and they will also describe them as, or themselves as feeling alone in the experience. And I'm lucky enough to have seen enough testimony and read enough, hunted these things down, as far as people's experiences and drawn through lines, commonalities from one experience to the next, from one individual to the next, and seeing patterns and recognizing like, oh, this is not, I think you're meant to feel alone and isolated in it. I think that's beneficial for them. I think it might've been your space I was also talking on where I said that if you don't share these experiences with somebody, then they only manifest themselves as fear, which is, that's a meal for them. But if you can find somebody who can take you seriously and have these conversations with them, well, then it alleviates the fear. And 2, you can then try to look for information and recourse, which slowly turns into something different. It turns into hope or determination. And so it's in their best interest to make you feel isolated, to make you feel like you can't talk about this, to make you feel like it's only happening to you, because then the experience never transcends the baseline of fear. It stays there. And instead of evolving into something different, which human beings, I think we're excellent at, when we unify. Yeah, it was your space. I was saying it's like when you go, I would never go into a haunted house by myself, right? I just wouldn't do it. I've always been into those things. Like I've always been into the paranormal and I've always wanted to do things like that. And I'd have, not alone though.
Me too.
With the homies, I can go, then all of a sudden you're emboldened. And so, yeah, it just goes to show you, like, as soon as you share that experience with somebody, it changes the energy of it. There's still fear is still there, but it's much more on the back burner. And in the forefront is, curiosity, hope, determination, things of that nature. So let's go forward from there. Do you have other experiences that you would be interested in sharing?
Honestly, other than that, I feel like they're all pretty similar. I got used to it. After that situation, I removed myself from the situation, and it kind of became like a cycle where whenever because I have borderline personality disorder. So like I go through depression cycles, and I didn't know that at the time, but I notice now that anytime I go through my cycles I'm more susceptible to it happening. But I've been closer to God and I pray. And so I feel like that's why it doesn't bug me so much. I don't have so much fear in me.
When was the first time that you thought to pray to God during these experiences?
Probably the 3rd time, to be honest. Because after my mom told me that it was a demon, I obviously was like, oh, well, God's real then, if that's what this really is. And so she gave me a Bible and she made me read Psalms 93 or 23. Yeah, sorry. Psalms 23 every night before bed. And I put my Bible under my pillow. And I noticed that didn't really keep it away, but it gave me more strength to kind of curse it off. And I eventually got to the point where I started cussing at it, like in my head. You fuck alone. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. I think that's how I described it to you too. It's like I'll have these experiences and I'm not very well versed in the Bible. So if I had to read a psalm in my head, I wouldn't be able to pull it off. But I can certainly kind of say things like, you have no authority here. And in the name of Jesus Christ, you need to fuck off. Like that's how it goes in my head. You know, I recently stopped smoking. So I'll go back and forth in these experiences where I don't have any substance issues. Although, well, I actually personally do believe I have a substance issue when it comes to weed because I quickly become dependent on it. People that say you can't get addicted to weed, I just don't believe that. And some people can function normally. For what I do, you know, I have conversations with people. And so it's not conducive to that. Like if I smoke, I don't want to talk to anybody. I really don't. And I also do a good job of not looking at the things that I need to be doing. So my responsibilities, whether it's as a father or a husband or a homeowner or an employee, whatever it is, or as a podcaster, I'm much less likely to look at those things. I can become very complacent and not pay attention. And so I recognize that it's not good for me. I just don't have a good personality for it. And whenever I stop, my dreams start coming back. Whereas I'll go for long bouts, I'll smoke for like consecutive months and I won't have any dreams. And then I'll stop. And about a week later, they start coming back. And lately it has been actually like really difficult. Like last night, for example, I wasn't having sleep paralysis, but I kept waking up with this. Well, one of the things that happens is I podcast in my dreams now, which sucks. It's like I'll wake up and I'll feel and have the memory of just having gone through like an entire episode in my sleep and like asking questions and going back and forth. And believe it or not, it can actually be very draining to do podcasts because I try to be very focused and thoughtful with my questions, things like that. And it takes some energy. And so you don't feel like you got a good rest when that happens. But the other thing that happens is like my dreams feel like information, like messages that I'm not understanding and that aren't coming through all the way. But I wake up with this lingering feeling of importance of something that I don't understand. So like last night, I'm sleeping. I have this dream where like there's something very symbolic is happening and I'm getting information, like something is coming at me and I'm paying attention and it's very important. And it all culminates at the end into an event. And when it ends, I'm like, oh, that's what it meant. Or at least that's the feeling that I get. And then I'm woken up by my wife who was like sat up in bed looking at her phone because she can't sleep. And I'm like, man, that dream ended. And then I woke up. In other words, the message was complete. And then I woke up, which to me is uncanny. Like the timing of it just doesn't make sense as being coincidental. But immediately it all just goes away. I have no idea what it was, but it feels incredibly important. And then I go to sleep again and I have this moment where it feels like, I saw you. And what I saw was like a kid, sort of a kid, maybe kind of like the size of my son. He's 8 years old. And it's got red eyes and it's got green skin. And it's got kind of like foliage on it, you know, like some plant growth. It didn't feel scary, but it was like when I woke up, I immediately pulled my phone out and was like, child size, green skin, foliage. And I couldn't find anything relevant, but at least I had the tab open. But like, why did I wake up feeling like, I got you. I saw you. Now I have a thing to dig at. That's what I felt like. I was like, I saw it. And even though that doesn't make sense in my waking life, I still was like, let me just put this shit in a tab so that I can try to hunt this down. But the dreams are just like so strange. And, I don't know what to make of it, but it has been actually really brutal. Like, and my wife feels the same energy. We're very much like connected on that level. So she can't sleep. And she's like, yeah, I don't know. Shit is strange. Just keep feeling weird dreams, just weird vibes all around. And so she just decides to sit up on her phone for a while, whereas I'll keep trying to go to sleep. But I don't know what to make of it. And it almost makes you want to just like start smoking again just so I could sleep, because I haven't gotten good sleep in like 3 days.
Oh, man. Yeah, going without marijuana in your system can totally affect your body, especially if you're a regular user. I know with me, I definitely go through withdrawal. It's definitely addictive in its own ways.
Yeah, people say that there's no withdrawal from it. And I think that's a narrative that we sold ourselves because we all wanted to paint it in the best light possible so that it would be legalized. I think we did a lot of that. We said a lot of strange things like, oh, it kills cancer cells. I don't know if it kills. It might. Maybe cannabis oil kills cancer cells. I don't know. I do know that since it's been legalized in a lot of places, that narrative has just almost kind of gone away.
Yeah.
I know that there are medicinal uses, right? Like I've seen people with Parkinson's or something of that nature. I don't know what the shaky one is, and they'll smoke and then they'll stop shaking and they'll be able to hold a conversation. That's obviously amazing. But I do think in a lot of ways we blew up the medicinal aspect of it because we wanted to give it every reason in the book why it could potentially be legalized. And I think we kind of painted it as this, I don't know, totally harmless thing. It's not totally harmless. You know, I don't think there's much harm in it. You can't OD on it. But as far as like, for me in particular, I recognize the harm. It's like, I can't do things. I can't do what I'm supposed to do. I can't talk to people. I don't want to look at my bills. That's not good.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I got to pay my bills, and in order to pay my bills, I got to look at them. I don't even want to look at them when I'm high. So, you know,
I don't get high really. I used to work to be a mom to function, because if I don't, then I'm in bed and I'm doing all those things that you do with using.
Yeah. What about your husband or your children? Do they have any, like, have these things gone away for you? Or
oh no, not for good. Like I said, it's like a cycle, so it'll still happen when I'm down, but it doesn't happen very often. So like every 3 months, you know.
And what sorts
At
of
least
things
that's not often to me. Well, it's just the same thing with the sleep paralysis. I don't really have much affect me outside of that in my home. In previous houses, I've experienced things like scratches and creepy sounds and shadows, but nothing major.
Yeah, the small ways, the minutia in which it shows up is always strange, right? It's like it's small enough where you could ignore it, but you don't really ignore it. It still registers on like some small mental level where you just kind of check it off, you write it down, and you keep it in the back of your mind, but there's nothing to do about it. And in reality, like focusing on it too much might end up being a bad thing.
Yeah.
Do your kids ever, you had this experience, right, where you're pregnant, and was there any fear in you that this was going to affect your children?
My firstborn daughter. Yep. Because it happened the most when I was pregnant with her. And weirdly, my mom said, it might have been her that put it in my head, and that's why I had so much fear. She told me that when my mom had an exorcism apparently done on her when she was a kid, and they told her it would affect her firstborn and then her firstborn and so on, which sounds wacky. So I don't know if maybe that's why, because I have no idea if that's true or not, you know what I mean? But the fear of those thoughts being put in my head, I think, definitely affected it and made me more vulnerable during that time. My girls have night terrors, but they haven't experienced sleep paralysis. But they do both have sleep terrors, night terrors.
Has your mom ever explained to you what she meant by that? Exorcist?
Yeah, she told me that she got into a cult when she was 13, and she carved like an upside down cross in her leg, and that she was just totally worshiping the devil. And then some scary stuff was happening to her, and it got so scary it was affecting her family, like her parents. And so they brought someone else in the family who was connected to a priest in the Catholic Church and had them come and do some kind of ritual exorcism type crap on her, and then told her that it would affect her future daughter, firstborn. So I don't know. My grandparents did tell me that there was creepy things that happened, but they never went into detail. So I know stuff happened, but I don't know how true, you know.
And your mother, she never explained sort of the nature of like, not even the details, but like how she got wrapped up in that. Was she spending time with the wrong people? Was this maybe something she sought out on her own?
She was rebelling. She was going against the family narrative. You know, they were all obviously, you know, believers. We had a Catholic, you know, family member come in and help her. So I think she was just rebelling. And she ran away a lot. So.
And so when you explained to her what was happening to you, that's why she had context to tell you that it was demonic in nature?
Yeah. Yeah, she had no problem. Just, okay, Kayla, we need to sit down immediately. And she told me everything. Just like, and I'm 13, like, what the fuck is happening? This can't be real, you know? But I just experienced it, so it had to be.
So let me ask you this. And, you know, I have an aunt who's bipolar schizophrenic, and she is diagnosed, right? Mm-hmm. But the things that she describes are paranormal in nature. So I remember one thing in particular. She is telling me a story about how she's at my other aunt's house. So this is my mom's sister I'm talking about, and she is at my great aunt's house, who would be her aunt, her mother's sister. And she's there, she's washing dishes. By this time, she's already been diagnosed. And so she has a really hard struggle of going in and out of various care facilities, and, you know, the mental health apparatus in America is kind of a nightmare. So she ends up staying with my great aunt, and she's there one day washing dishes, and she describes, a sound. A smell. And the smell is like sulfur, putrid, burning. She said like rotten meat and sulfur. And she says that when that happens, she knows that it's the devil. The devil has come to visit her. And so sure enough, she says she turns around and she sees him. And so she's telling me this. I remember we're on a back porch in New Jersey in a mountain town. So there's no street lights or anything. And the back porch is enclosed and it's all windows and it's pitch black outside. And she's not turned the light on to the porch, and she's smoking a cigarette, and it's just the cherry from her cigarette is lit up as she's telling me horrifying shit. And so I you know, the way she describes it, very slow, methodical, like the way she describes it. And so I just kind of take it as a scary story. I might have been like 17 at the time. And right around that time is when I start to really like wake up and start digging, going through all this paranormal research, conspiracy research. And as the years go on, all the way up to this day, I'm still collecting in sort of my mind's library stories of paranormal encounters with entities where they will smell like sulfur and rotting flesh. So I always go, was my aunt die? I mean, we talk about it in the States all the time about how the medical industry drops the ball. We just don't understand mental health, especially not something as complex as schizophrenia, multiple personality disorder. And there was a story about how my aunt was normal, but, you know, in her teenage years was messing around with a Ouija board. If I ask my mom, she goes, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that had anything to do with it. But if you ask other family members, they're like, yeah, that was the turning point.
Yeah.
And it's just hard to place that, right? It's like, how much of spiritual warfare are we misdiagnosing? I have a great deal of respect for the medical industry as it pertains to trying to help people. And I can't fault the industry for not understanding everything, right? We're science is always evolving. The medical industry is always evolving. But we could do a whole podcast on the ways in which the medical industry or the pharmaceutical industry has dropped the ball. And also another podcast on the ways in which they've purposely done it to create dependency on the apparatus, right? And so I just can't help but wonder, what are we misdiagnosing and calling a chemical imbalance, let's say, when in reality it is some form of spiritual warfare? And it's a hard place to go because it's a very delicate conversation. But I can't help but think about that when it's like your family, from your mom's perspective, she's going like, oh yeah, I could have told you this was going to happen. And then what do you do with that information? What do you think about that?
And looking back on it now, I'm like, holy crap, like she could have like totally calmed me down and maybe just took me to church or something, man. I don't know, but it was traumatizing to know that what I was experiencing was definitely evil at first, you know, and then being a pregnant teenager at 17 and experiencing that, I felt like it was going to come after my kids. So that's, of course, the most terrifying feeling, not just yourself, but then your child. Like, so yeah, I don't know. Not very happy with the way it was handled, but I guess the honesty is important, right?
Right. I mean, I'm trying to think from my perspective if I would tell my son anything. You know, what's interesting is my son has this story that I haven't indulged in, but one day we were, I had YouTube open and it was my YouTube. He has his own children's YouTube, although he doesn't use it anymore because I just can't stand YouTube. There's always something weird going on. It's like, even on the children's YouTube, I'm like, why is this shit? Why are they doing this? You know, whatever it is, it's always something strange. And, but for a period of time, he did have his own YouTube kids thing. But one day mine is open and I'm scrolling through it on the TV. And at this point in the game, I was not making paranormal content at all. And I also knew that I didn't want to create a narrative for him to latch onto. In other words, I didn't want him to overhear me talking about something and then for a child's mind to like expand on it and be like, whoa, I see spooky shit too. You know what I mean? Because children are so impressionable that he tells me all kinds of shit. And I have to be like, you didn't do that shit. Why are you lying to me? Like I do that all the time. Right. Like, why are you making shit up? You know, when he's obviously making it up, it's like 8-year-olds will be like, oh, dudes, the other day I was walking down the street and then somebody got out of the car and there were like 5 ninjas. And then I had to defeat 5 ninjas. And I'm like, dude, why are you? So I don't want him to, you know, suddenly be like, I see greasy demons too. But as I'm scrolling through YouTube, one of the thumbnails out of like 20 thumbnails that are on the screen, and they're of all kinds of things. I like to watch Fail Army. I think it's hilarious. We also like to watch like the best of, which is like people doing amazing, cool things, triple backflips on motorcycles, whatever. And then in all those things, there's one thumbnail from like some paranormal thing. And it's the image of the Hat Man. Are you familiar with that?
No.
So the Hat Man is an entity we talk quite a bit about on this show, where basically it's like the silhouette of a man. It's a shadow person in that way, where it's all black. You can't see any features, but it also isn't quite a shadow. It's like a 3-dimensional entity standing there.
Oh, okay.
But it's always wearing a brimmed hat and like a duster coat, like almost looks like Zorro. You remember Zorro?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think I have heard you describe this. My bad.
Yeah, so it looks like Zorro. Um, so he sees this image and he goes, I've seen that before. And I'm like, oh, shit. That's crazy, man. And so he starts describing this thing, and I'm still on the fence. I'm like, this could be anything. He could just be wanting to. Kids have this thing where they want something significant to happen to them, so they have something to talk about, I guess, maybe is a way to put it. And so I'm not sure if this isn't that. But then he starts to talk to me about, well, I used to see him in the hallways at Aunt Margaret's house at night. Aunt Margaret is actually, funny enough, the same great aunt where my mom's sister, my aunt, was telling me about seeing this dude while she's doing dishes that she called the devil. Mm-hmm. And we lived there for a while. And he goes, yeah, I would see him walking up and down the hallways. And I'm like, that's crazy, man. But I'm sure that's not going to happen anymore because we moved out of that house. But he wants to talk about it. So I'm not dismissing him, but I'm also not feeding him. And so he goes, yeah, the last time I saw him, it felt like there was belts all over my body strapping me to the bed.
Oh my God.
And I couldn't move.
No.
And I was like, oh. Like that is sleep paralysis out of a 8-year-old's mouth. He was like 6 at the time, probably, when he's describing this. And so, right. But he's in pretty high spirits about it. He's just like, this is some shit I seen, Dad. And
brave so little like, guy.
Yeah. He's pretty solid when it comes to that stuff. And he goes, I saw him when I was stuck in the bed. I could see him in the window standing outside, like in the spotlight of the driveway. Oh. And I'm like, that's fucking horrifying. Yeah. So now, and my wife is there for this too. I'm pretty sure she was right there. And it's just like, so now I left that alone for many years. And then once I started to stumble upon, really, I came across a podcaster. His name's Tony Merkel. He does a show called The Confessionals. You'd probably love it. Honestly, Kay, you should give it a chance.
Okay.
It's almost exclusively paranormal testimony. Just people having these experiences. They're just regular people. Cool. And they're just telling Tony, what it is. He's actually a massive inspiration for having done my show. So certainly this aspect where I'm talking to people like you about these experiences. One of the reasons it was so enticing is because it mirrored a lot of my experiences. So once I start going down that path, I start talking about it more with my wife, where I'm like, this is spiritual warfare, 100%. And so now we've gotten to the point where like he hears me talk about these things and we have conversations. And so I have to arm him with something, right? So I arm him with the name of Jesus Christ. I tell him that we have authority over these things through him and that what they want is for us to be afraid. But for a while, it was weird. I just didn't know. I remember when in that house, it was a 2-story home and the basement was finished, but it was creepy. And he goes to the bottom of the stairs one day and stands at the landing. So it's like one staircase, a landing, and another staircase goes down into the basement. And he's just playing. Everything's cool. And he walks down, stands on the landing, looks down the stairs, locks up, and then just starts screaming.
Oh, no.
So I run down and I scoop him up. And as I'm scooping him up, I don't see anything. But I do remember like feeling like something was horrifying right there at the bottom of the stairs in the shadows. But I just, it all happened so fast. You just run down, scoop them up and get back to the top of the stairs, console them, tell them everything's okay. But I say all that because it's like when you're telling me this, as a parent, I know I've had my own concerns where it's like, I don't know when the day is going to come. Obviously, since I've thought this, the day has come a couple times But when he's real little, it's like, I don't know when the day is going to come where he's going to have some Hollywood moment where he's screaming about something hiding in the darkness. And I just think people like you and me who have had all these weird experiences, you can't help but have that cross your mind.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry your son had to go through that. I mean, I'm glad he was brave, but it's horrifying for me. As you know, it's like one of my worst fears.
Your oldest daughter, so far so good?
Yeah, so far. She hasn't come to me about it anyway. I know she's had night terrors, but she hasn't come to me about sleep paralysis.
Do you know the nature of the night terrors? What it is that's got her so worked up about the dream?
She never remembers them. The girls are always like, what? They're confused when I tell them they're screaming in their sleep and I have to stop them from screaming. They're both always confused. They don't know what's happening.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really
that's interesting.
Weird. And they've never been through something traumatic.
But that's like a traditional night terror. Like that's what you would that's like definitional night terror, right? Like I've never had those. Yeah. And my son has only ever woken up once screaming, but he knew what it was that he was screaming about.
Yeah.
But to wake up and like not even know that you were screaming. Yeah. So it's almost like sleepwalking.
Yeah.
Right. Where like you wake them up and they're just confused.
And it's so weird because it's just my girls. I have 2 boys too, and they're fine. They don't have night terrors.
Yours started at 13?
Yep.
That's an interesting age, right? Because that's the bar for entry, starting to become a woman. And
yeah,
that sort of symbolism is like rife when it comes to ritual and things of that nature. You could watch any number of like horror movies where like the daughter hits 13 and that's when the shit starts going awry. Man,
I didn't think about that.
I felt so bad. That's why I laughed. I was like, I shouldn't fucking say this. But
oh my gosh.
That's a thing though. When especially with girls, it's like, yeah, when they hit 13, that's when things go south. And it's just interesting because you say it doesn't happen to you have 2 girls?
Yeah, I have 2 girls, 2 boys.
And have either of the girls hit 13?
No, my oldest is 12. She'll be 13 in May.
We'll do another episode in June. No,
I'm
it's just one of those
not.
things. No, of course not. But that's just one of that's what I do is I connect all the things. I just have all this information going around in my head. And so I can't help but connect dots out loud. But yeah, I mean, that's just something you see in Hollywood, right? You'll never, there's so many movies where that just 13 years old that's why even like 13 is the number of the occult.
Oh yeah, I know that.
Yeah, for whatever that's worth. What about your husband? Does he doesn't have any of these experiences?
So
no sleep paralysis or anything for him?
No, he doesn't even believe in it. He's been through some things with an ex that made him a non-believer because she was overboard. So now I can't. It's all in my head to him. So
yeah, that's one of those things where overtly religious people can kind of ruin it for you. I think that some people latch onto religion more so as an identity than like something they strongly believe in. And the people that are identity driven tend to be almost exhausting, and it can be off-putting. Like a lot of people, for example, have an upbringing in the church, and then later on in life, they go in the opposite direction fully. Whereas I was lucky enough to have no experience with the church or religion as a kid. And so I came to it objectively, just information based. I was seeing weird paranormal things or occult things in various industries, music, Hollywood, things of that nature. And it all kind of led me towards God and Christ. And I'm lucky that I didn't have any baggage where I didn't have to be like, this is stupid, because I had some bad taste left in my mouth from some experience with somebody who pushed too hard or whatever the case may be. But it's funny because a lot of those people, when you look at them who are opposed to a religious context because they think it's silly, but also a lot of those people aren't having experiences too. So it's like, shit,
right.
Is there something to that? Should you just close your eyes to it and your ears to it and you get to go through life without having these experiences? I think I'm too far gone for that. I think that, I'm engaged in spiritual warfare for better or for worse. And there's certainly no going back to that. But it does seem like a nice kind of peaceful existence.
Right?
I bet it might be a little envious when you're going through sleep paralysis. Like, why can't I just not have anything to do with this shit?
Yeah, definitely have been there.
Well, Kay, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us?
Oh no, I feel like I shared the good stuff.
Well, in my opinion, it doesn't, and this is only my opinion, I'm just a podcaster, but it seems to me like there's just something else going on. I think that it is much more likely having to do with whatever decisions that your mother made when she was younger. My grandmother was very much into sort of spirituality. I don't know if she was what you would call Christian or Catholic or anything like that, but she had a lot of paranormal experiences that I'm aware of. And I think these things are generational. I don't think you get to escape them. And I'm not saying that means that your kids are going to have some doom and gloom, but I think it's probably fair to say that your kids are going to grow up to be interested. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think that interest, the same way like my great grandfather was a welder and I'm a welder. So I think we carry a lot through the timeline, through the generations. And I think in particular, one of the more difficult ones to deal with can be interest in the paranormal. Because look, if I have an inkling to be a welder, if I have that same itch that my grandfather had, well, there's a path for me. I can go be an apprentice. I can go to a school. I can get a job. If your grandmother was a chef, there's a clear path for that. But what do you do if your grandmother thought she was a witch? You know what I mean? There's no real clear path for that. So when it comes to like talking to these things and considering them, or talking about these things and considering them, I'm happy to do it because I don't think there's a version of this where my son doesn't. Yeah, that day's already coming past where my son's like, what the hell's going on here with this? And if my son was like, how do you turn flour into a cake? I'd be lost on that one. I don't know how to do that. But if my son comes to me and he's like, dude, what's the hat man? I'm like, sit down, dude. I got you. Don't worry. And I can tell him everything I know about it and tell him how to deal with it if it happens. So, when your kids come to you, that'll be your job.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure it's going to happen, but I've just been trying not to think about it.
I'm sorry. This entire episode has been like, Kate, I want you to think about this. I want you to think a lot about this.
About my kid. Yeah, I should though. It is coming up. You're right.
Well, until something happens, maybe it's best to not, right? It's like I was saying, as a father, I tried for a long time not to feed into any of his, because kids are malleable and you don't want to be the reason that they're suddenly, I'd much rather it be some like spiritual DNA reason than like dad was watching spooky YouTube videos. Yeah. And that's what made it happen. So, until that day comes, but you're going to be, if that day comes, at least you'll be able to guide them in a way that you only uniquely can.
Yeah. True that.
Well, thank you, Kay, for spending some time with me and sharing your stories. I know whenever I have people on to tell me about testimony, it's always weird for them because we don't go around sharing these stories very often. But I do think it's important And every time somebody shares one, I imagine that somebody else down the line is going to hear that and go, oh shit, that happened to me too. And in a lot of ways, that's helpful. I know you've expressed that to me while we were chopping it up in your spaces. That it's good. It's just good to hear other people are going through things, and that, you know, how can you be crazy if the details match up across other people's experiences? So I just want to thank you for your time. And one last time, where can people find you on Twitter?
Florida Sky Gal.
And when you guys go into the spaces, no arguing or you're getting tossed out.
Straight up.
Thank you guys for listening to the Ravens Watch. And until next time, peace. Bye, Kay.
Bye. Thank you.